What if the harder you're trying right now, the further you actually are from getting what you want? Not because effort is useless, but because you've been applying the wrong kind of effort, forcing things that were only ever going to work if you stopped forcing them. There's a 2,000-year-old Taoist idea about exactly this, and once you understand it, you'll start noticing how often your own struggle is the thing creating the resistance you're struggling against. The idea is called Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action, though that translation misses something important. Wu Wei doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting without unnecessary strain, moving in alignment with how things naturally work instead of constantly fighting against the current. Lao Tzu, the philosopher credited with founding Taoism, used water as his central image for this. Water doesn't fight the rock in its path. It doesn't tense up, calculate a strategy, or force its way through. It simply flows around, finding the path of least resistance, and over enough time, water carves through stone anyway, not through force, but through patient, natural persistence. You do the opposite of this constantly, and you've probably never questioned it, because you were taught that effort equals worth. You believe that if something isn't working, the answer is always to push harder, try more, control more variables, force the outcome through sheer will. Sometimes that works. But you've also lived through the other version, the nights you couldn't fall asleep specifically because you were trying so hard to fall asleep. The conversation that got worse the harder you tried to convince someone. The creative project that stayed stuck exactly as long as you white-knuckled it, and unlocked the moment you finally stopped forcing an answer and let your mind wander somewhere else. That pattern isn't a coincidence. Certain things genuinely respond to force, physical labor, deadlines, discipline. But an enormous number of the things you're straining against actually resist force directly, and yield instead to patience, timing, and a kind of relaxed attentiveness that looks, from the outside, like doing nothing. Lao Tzu wrote that the softest things in the world overcome the hardest things in the world. This sounds like a riddle, but it's describing something you've already witnessed. Rigid trees snap in a storm. Flexible ones bend and survive. A person gripping a relationship too tightly, needing constant reassurance, checking in constantly, watching for signs, usually pushes that connection away faster than someone who trusts it enough to hold it loosely. Force generates resistance almost everywhere it's applied to something alive, whether that's a person, a situation, or your own nervous system. Wu Wei doesn't ask you to become passive or stop caring about outcomes. It asks you to notice the difference between two very different kinds of effort. There's effort that works with the grain of a situation, timed well, responsive, adjusting as you go. And there's effort that works against the grain, forcing a specific outcome on your own timeline regardless of what the situation is actually telling you. The first kind tends to succeed with surprising ease. The second kind tends to exhaust you while making the problem worse. Think about the last time you tried to force sleep. The stress of insisting you needed to fall asleep right now was the exact thing keeping your nervous system activated and awake. The moment you finally accepted you might be up a while longer, stopped fighting it, your body often relaxed enough to actually drift off. This is Wu Wei in its most literal physical form, proof that some outcomes only arrive once you release your grip on demanding them. This applies just as directly to your ambitions. You can want something intensely and still approach getting it with a completely different posture. Wanting a promotion and constantly, anxiously performing for approval, checking whether people notice your effort, is a tense, forceful, water-fighting the rock kind of energy. Wanting the same promotion while doing consistently excellent work, building real relationships, and trusting the process to unfold on something closer to its own timeline, is water finding its way around the stone. Both people might eventually get the promotion. Only one of them isn't exhausted and resentful by the time they do. You can start noticing this distinction today by paying attention to where in your life you're gripping too tightly. A relationship you're managing instead of trusting. A goal you're forcing on an artificial deadline instead of letting develop at its actual pace. A conversation you keep steering instead of letting unfold naturally. In each case, ask yourself what it would look like to apply less force, not less care, less force, and see what actually happens when you stop white-knuckling the outcome. This isn't an excuse for laziness, and Lao Tzu wasn't advocating for passivity dressed up as wisdom. Wu Wei still requires attention, skill, and genuine effort, the same way a river still requires the physical reality of moving water. It just asks that effort be shaped around what's actually happening, instead of forced against it out of anxiety or control. If this idea landed with you, hit subscribe, because I'm bringing you exactly this kind of practical ancient wisdom every single day. Drop a comment telling me one thing in your life you've been forcing that might actually need you to loosen your grip instead. Like this video if it shifted something for you, and come back tomorrow, because next time we're diving into the sunk cost fallacy, and why the philosophers understood, long before modern psychology did, that walking away from something you've already invested in can be the most rational decision you'll ever make.